This is Jeffrey Crivera, and I'm conducting an oral history with Julia Brunson. The interview is being conducted at Hopper Academy in the Historic Georgetown neighborhood in Sanford, Florida, on Thursday, May 9th, 2024. Ms. Brunson, thanks so much for speaking with us today. Would you please begin by just stating your full name for us and telling us a bit about life in Georgetown, what it was like for you growing up?
Thank you, Jeff. My name is Julia Brunson. I grew up in Georgetown. Real pleased about that. Had a lot of fun in Georgetown, learned a lot of things. We lived on Locust Avenue, and our house number was 712 Locust Avenue. We attended Historic St. James Angry Church. My father's ancestors were there. They started all this stuff. So I'm real pleased that I'm alive and well to tell some of the stuff that I remember. I'd like to really talk today about Jim Crow in not only Sanford, but specifically in the Georgetown area. Jim Crow is alive and well. He is not dead. And I do believe that if we are not careful, we could be back under Jim Crow again. In particular, I want to tell you about an incident. I can't remember how old I was, but I must have been about 7 or 8 years old. My father was the Iceman for Georgetown and Sanford, in this area anyway. And so on Sunday mornings, he had the routine that he would go out early and stop ice at certain places, and then he'd come back and have breakfast with us. And that morning he came back to Sunday morning, and I was dressed for Sunday school, and I heard he and my mother kind of talking loud. They never did that. And my mother was saying, "I don't want you to take her." And he says, "I'm going to take her." And he yelled back, he says, "Julia, you have your clothes on for Sunday school?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, come, I want to take you somewhere." And my mother was going out there saying, "No, don't take her." But we got in his truck. We went down Locust Avenue, and I do remember this because there were still people around where this incident had happened. We drove down to 9th Street, and he turned on Orange Avenue. And on the corner of Orange and 10th Street, people were in the street watching. And there was this cross that was still burning. It was smoking. The black stuff was still there. And he said, "I brought you down here because I want you to see this." And I said, "Why? What is this?" He explained to me why the cross was being burned rather, in that yard. And that house is still there today. He said there was a man that lived in the house with the lady. There was a man and a woman. And it seems that there was some liaison between a white man and this lady. And so what he did, he got his cronies together on a Saturday night, early Sunday morning, and put the cross there and burned it. And he said, "That's a warning." I said, "Warning for what?" He said, "Well, you should never, ever think about a white man." He said, "Because white people will be white people, and you're going to be black for the rest of your life, as they're going to be white. So you do not do this, because even if you go into another area of the country and it's accepted, the children may be accepted, but there will be people standing in the background telling you or pointing at you, and they could hurt you." And so I said, "Well, how come you're showing me this?" He says, "Because you and I always talk, and I tell you everything, and I want you to know this." He said, "And I'm going to take you back home, and you eat your breakfast and go to Sunday school." And he did. And My mother didn't talk for a long time after I got back in the house. She didn't ask me what I'd seen or what happened. But I walked down to St. James, the Sunday school, and she came along about 10:30 for choir. She sang in the choir at church. So that was something that happened. And then later on in the week, we heard that the man had left town, the black man, because he was afraid that the Klan was going to get him. See, this was a Klan burning. Crosses were always connected to the Ku Klux Klan. And he figured that if he stayed, then they were going to come back and get him. So he left town. I don't know if he ever came back or what, but I know he left town. And I remember what he looked like. I can't remember his name, because in the neighborhood we knew everybody. So that was my first introduction to Mr. Jim Crow. 7 or 8 years old. I knew nothing about the world except my world in Georgetown. And now the Klan has come into my world and has destroyed it somewhat. But I tell you what it did do. I've never had a white boyfriend, never ever thought about having one because of that Sunday morning. That's a hard, harsh lesson for a 7 or 8-year-old girl. It made me a better person though, because I knew everything. See, my dad had told me everything that was going on and why.
Do you have any other memories of any other incidents of?
I remember, and I don't know, I believe this was a Saturday, and it must have been because I was going to the movies, the Ritz Theater, and when we came out of the movies, there was a parade on Sanford Avenue, and the cars were filled with Klansmen. They had their stuff on, they had their hats on. Some of them didn't even have their mask covered the face. They were just so brazen and bold with it. And I remember standing on the corner of 5th Street and Sanford Avenue as they came north on Sanford Avenue. I never found out what that was about or why they did it, but they did it. And see, I was a little older then, so I realized who they were. They didn't burn any crosses that time, but it was just the idea that they had the bold nerve to drive into a community of black folk and taking the mask off and just having a grand old time.
And what shades of Jim Crow do you still see?
Well, Jim Crow now is introverted. Back when I was growing up as a kid, it was extroverted. They didn't care who knew that they belonged to the Klan. So now, I have a situation right now that I'm going to start working on today, tomorrow, where, well, let's start in the very beginning, because the Sanford Herald has always been the only thing here. And they had one lady who was there, I think Marva was there for about 40 years. She got sick and died. And then they had another lady, she came and stayed 2 or 3 years and she got sick and died. And now they have someone writing for them, covering all of the events downtown. See, I think in their mindset, they're still thinking that they're going to put all the colored news on one page. They're not going to incorporate it into the paper. That's why we call it a mud wrapper. That's all the Sanford Herald is good for, because they never had any real stories in there about our community. So now we can see what they're what they're doing. They want to go back to the segregated papers. They don't want anybody to know what's going on at City Hall. They don't want anybody to know what's going on with the county commissioners. And when you've got somebody reporting all this stuff, and then somebody going out in the community finding stories, and then they hire somebody else and don't even tell you that the job is open. That's the covert part. I mean, that's Jim Crow today. So it's like kids, you know, you stand up in a crowd and you got a big mouth, and then you take a rock, throw it, and then you put it behind your back and like you didn't do anything. That's what's happening today with Jim Crow. Even though we have all the laws on the books, you may get the job, but then you could be treated very, very badly once you get in there. The work environment is not the same.
Could you tell us a bit about the Georgetown steering team and some of the steps that the community's taken to maybe make their history a bit more known?
Yeah, the Georgetown steering team, I'm just real proud of that. I'm not sure how we got started, but I mean, it is here. I remember in early 2020, I got a phone call from the preservation planner at City Hall, and she wanted to know where she could have a meeting for people in Georgetown. This is going to be the final reading and hearing of the designation that they were going to send up to Washington for Georgetown being a historic neighborhood. So I said, yeah, sure. And she said, well, where? I said, St. James. And she said, well, don't you have to ask somebody? No, it's done. What day you want to do it? And she told me, and I said, okay, fine. So I remember we had quite a few people there that night, and the reviewers from Tallahassee had come down, and they asked all kinds of questions, and we gave them some input that should have been on there. Well, we forgot about it because it was February. The next month was March, and that's when COVID shut everything down. So I know nobody even, I know I never thought about it anymore. And October or November, I got a call from the preservation planner, and she said, we got the designation for Georgetown. And I said, what designation? I forgot all about it. And so she told me, and I said, oh, that's good. But we couldn't do anything with it because of the pandemic going on. Well, anyway, we finally got together, and we had, I think our first meeting must have been around August or September of 21. And we got Hopper. In fact, we got this very same room. And I called as many people as I could call and tell them to come. And we came in, and the preservation planner told us what was happening and why we were going to be doing it. And all of a sudden, she called me up to run the meeting. I didn't know that. But then I thought about it. I said, okay, how can I separate the Georgetown neighborhood from Historic St. James? I'm working on grants there. How can I separate that? They so intertwined. So I said, okay, I'll do it. And that's how I got to be sort of in charge. There was no election. I guess it was an appointment or voluntold, whatever. But I'm very proud of the work that we have done. The first important thing I think we did was we have street signs, street toppers on every intersection in Georgetown that says Historic Georgetown neighborhood established in 1890. And we had a big thing in February, I can't remember the year, I think it was 22, yeah, where the Sanford Trust gave us the talents of a graphic artist, and they, this lady drew it up, and then she gave us some proofs to look at, and we decided which one we wanted. And then went to the mayor, and he told city planner, the preservation planner, knew somebody that had some money in the grant left over, money in their bucket left over for the year. And so she and the mayor went to that person and said, can you give us that money for the street toppers? Well, they were about $9,000. You know, we had no money like that. But with the help of the preservation planner, the mayor, and the city manager, he got a little bit in on it. And we got the street toppers put up. So that made us on par with the other neighborhood, historic neighborhood across Sanford Avenue going west. See, that's a historic neighborhood also. And they had street toppers, so how come we couldn't have street toppers come out? So we got them. And that's one of the things we need to do now. We need to go back and make sure that every intersection has a street topper. They're just beautiful, they really are. And we use them as our logo on all of our work that we send out, our letters and any kind of advertisements for what we're doing. But the Georgetown steering team they have been very faithful. I don't care when you call them, they'll come or they'll do whatever you ask them to do. And so I'm real pleased, and we're getting ready now for our third Florida Emancipation Proclamation celebration. And I say Florida because Florida received the information that the proclamation had been signed on May 20th. And then in Texas, they got it in June 19th. But they were the last ones to get it. So I think it's good that we recognize Florida's Emancipation Proclamation. And so the first year we had a bounce house, we had, small things. And then last year we had small, they were a little larger. This year, boy, we're breaking the seams this year. We've got the bike riders coming in, and we had them last year, but they're going to be riding from Sanford over to Eatonville, and then the next group is going to go to Alta Mountain, and the final group is going to go, I think out there on 1792 somewhere, but they have 3 levels of experienced bikers. And so they're going to be doing all of that. This is starting on the 18th for the bike riders and the festivities here on Hopper grounds. On the 17th, Friday evening, I think that starts around 5:30 at the Women's Club in Sanford on Park Avenue. We're having a Emancipation Proclamation Gala. And so it's the first time we've done that, so we'll see. We're running out of tickets, and that's a good thing. So we're happy about that. And then this year, we're adding, instead of us going to a church, we're having the churches come here for a gospel fest. So as you can hear, we're moving right along, and we're getting community involvement. And they're just really happy about it. One young man said to me, I took some flyers to his house a couple of years ago, and he said, it's about time somebody does something for Georgetown. And I said, well, what about you? You're not doing anything. And he said, okay, all right, I'll do something. So you just got to find the people. I think they want to have it, but a lot of them don't know how to even start. But if somebody gets it started, I think they will come along and help you out. And if they don't, then you could just voluntold them.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add or expand on before we finish? Do you have any final thoughts for us?
Final thoughts. I just hope this continues. I don't see this as a short-term situation. I did a presentation down at First United Methodist Church in February. They're just beginning to celebrate their 150th anniversary. So that tells you that we're the oldest church in Sanford. We were chartered 10 years before the city of Sanford even knew that they were here. So, and then we really don't have any dates as to when the Negro or black people came into Sanford to work. But we know it was around 1890. That was when the neighborhood was formed. And so I'd like to see that continue. I want folks to understand what this means to them. They grew up in a different kind of environment. They probably don't know anything about Jim Crow. They probably, and I know that they don't know about the Negro National Anthems. We have that song every year. We pass papers out. And the kids don't know it, the parents don't know it. So that would be one of my things. I sure wish they would learn that. But I'm just happy that those black people got on a barge and came down from Jacksonville and stopped at the St. John River. And they thought enough to start a church. And these are my ancestors, folk that were related to me, that started this church. And they didn't have a building, but they worshiped under a brush arbor out on Mellonville Avenue. So I'm happy.
Mrs. Brunson, thank you so much again for sharing your time and speaking with us today.
Thank you for asking.
Absolutely. This has been Jeffrey Crivero at Hopper Academy on May 9th, 2024.